Well, to falsify intelligent design, what I would do is I would go and find things that supposedly have the designed attributes like specified complexity, and then prove that they weren't in fact made by design. Because you have certain properties like the high improbability that it could have came about by chance, combined with the fact that it resembled something that has a high degree of specification that appears to be designed.
Okay, but
take something that meets what supposedly is the design criterion, like the bacterial flagellum, and show that this thing that appears designed, not just that it doesn't look like it was produced by evolution, but has the appearance of design. It resembles, it bespeaks, it screams out that it was designed. Now show me that wasn't.
But you understand,
and you falsified the theory.
And you understand, yes.
No,
but
that's a shifting of the burden of proof.
That is completely not how it's
yes, the hell it's not. Give me a second. First of all, intelligent design is nothing but a big argument from ignorance. All of it. Because how do you recognize that something is designed?
Because it resembles characteristics of things that
that is an inductive argument by analogy, and it is an appeal to ignorance. This looks designed, therefore it was. That's false. It is not a sound argument.
Sir, actually, I know you said you didn't want to hear extensive quotations, but I mean, even Bill Gates, who I think has a far more knowledge in computer programming, admits that the DNA is literally a computer program, but far more complex.
Congratulations! You're now quoting billionaire software designers with respect to biology. How much further out there you want to go? Why don't you address the point that I made instead of something that is completely irrelevant?
I did address your point.
No, you didn't.
No, see,
I asked a question. I asked how do you determine that something is designed by an intelligence?
And I said, you say it's an argument from analogy, but what I would do is, like biologists have done, find things in nature that do, at first...
Here you go. You find things in nature that look designed.
Let him finish.
Okay.
Okay, you find things in nature that first have the appearance of design. I mean, people who are evolutionists have said the bacterial flagellum looks like it's a motor.
I swear to God, if you just quote one more person instead of actually having a discussion, I'll hang up.
You don't want me to cite credible sources?
I want you to have it. I don't give a damn what you cite. I want to actually have a discussion where we address the issue and you answer the question. And the question's pretty simple. How do you go about determining that something was intelligently designed? You can answer that without saying so-and-so says.
Yeah, I mean, I'm simply asking, when I asked you in the first place, what does a non-God designed, designer-designed universe look like? I'm wanting to get your ideas, okay? Just at a baseline level, to be able to look at a thing and go, okay, that's designed and that wasn't. How do you make that simple distinction? I don't want to go into big rigmarole about... how the process is...
What the hell Bill Gates thinks.
Yeah, what this or that other biologist or software designer thinks. Just in terms of, at a basic level, understanding it's cold outside. How do I know it's cold outside? Because I know what it's like when it's hot outside. The basic frames of reference, in order to be able to draw these comparisons between design and non-design, between hot and cold, between any things where there is an opposite to be understood. In order to comprehend design, it seems to me that you ought to have a pretty good idea of what it means to be non-designed. Okay, so at a very basic level, how do you, not Bill Gates, not one of these other sources that you want to quote to us, how do you go about determining that?
Sure. You go in nature and you see systems that are motors, literally are motors or are computer programs like the DNA molecule and the bacterial flagellum. Then go and see if they see if they're irreducibly complex, see if they're in fact complex specified information, whether they could have come about very probably by chance, or in fact they couldn't. Then if they have a very specific purpose, and as well as that, there's a good chance that it might very well be designed.
And at any point during this process, do you ever take into consideration the fact that there is a very well-established scientific discipline in evolutionary biology that shows how these life forms, these organisms, these parts of our ecosystem, they do appear to have a sense of purpose, a sense of design, but we understand evolutionarily how they got there, how each of these things fits into its own niche naturally.
Well, I didn't say every system is an irreducibly complex system. I said that was a trait to go and look for in specific systems. Even, nobody would make the claim that every single system is irreducibly complex. That would be ridiculous to say something like that.
Well,
but that wasn't what I was getting at.
I'm still waiting for an answer to my question, because when I asked how you determine that something is intelligently designed, you said you go out in nature and find something that looks designed, and then you demonstrate that it's irreducibly complex. And then you can make the case that it was most probably intelligently designed. That is not anything that even remotely resembles science or the process of demonstrating something, because all you did was say, I go out and find something that looks designed, and if I can't find a way that it's not irreducibly complex, I'm going to go ahead and believe that the best explanation is that there's an intelligent designer. That is not how we recognize intelligent design. I can tell you how we recognize intelligent design. For example, I made this the other day. It's a chainmail bracelet, really simple thing. I could leave this outside and everybody would be able to tell that it was intelligently designed. And it has nothing to do with complexity. It has to do with every single example we have of anything remotely like this is designed, and we have no examples that this occurs naturally. It is a contrast between naturally occurring and non-naturally occurring. That is how you determine whether or not something is intelligently designed. And it is folly for quasi-biologists to go around asserting that biological systems for which we have a good understanding of how they reproduced naturally are intelligent design. And that is why I keep saying that this is a big argument from ignorance, and it is creationism in a lab coat.
And earlier on, you again, you talked about how you thought Kenneth Miller was strawmanning a lot of Behe's arguments, but all through your explanations, I hear you talking about making the usual creationist errors, where you talk about, well, if it's either just by chance or it has a purpose. But of course, anyone who's studied evolution knows it's not a pure chance process. There is nothing simply random and simply chancy about natural selection or punctuated equilibrium or any of the various theories of evolutionary processes that are out there. Evolution isn't simply, it's not this false dichotomy between chance or intent.
Yeah, it's not taking all the parts of a motor and throwing them in a pile and seeing if they produce something. That's not the way evolution works. So when you misrepresent this as either it's chance or it was intelligently designed, you are poisoning the well so that your argument looks more appealing. That's a straw man that you're attacking as soon as you start talking about chance.
Okay, let me respond to both points. First about the falsifiability of intelligent design, and then I'll respond to the word randomness, then, which is essentially what you're getting at. As for Matt, I think that was a great analogy, and I agree with you completely about how you would recognize that the bracelet is designed and everything. But if you go and you take the flagellum, which has been accepted by many, many biologists to literally be a motor, function as a motor, any single motor I've ever seen is the product of intelligence.
No,
so when you find a more sophisticated motor,
we're back to the
why is it preposterous to go and say it might be from a designer?
Well, because we have evidence that it occurs naturally.
What evidence do we have of a motor ever appearing naturally? That's what I'm not understanding. Because any motor,
first of all,
that I've seen come from some kind of design.
First of all, you've already given the example, and that's the bacterial flagellum. Now, second of all, you're making the same equivocation fallacy problem that we had 3 weeks ago when I was in the show, where the guy called in to talk about DNA as a code, and I tried to explain how he was confusing himself. When we say that some things are, that DNA is a code, yes, in many respects it is, but that is an analogy, and it is improper to imply that it is a code in the common sense of the word, where a code is to convey intelligent information from one intelligence to another. DNA does not do that. DNA is an entirely mechanical, chemical process. It's not conveying information from an intelligence to an intelligence. So it is a code by analogy. In the sense of the bacterial flagellum, when we call it a motor, we are saying it operates as a motor. That is a description of what it does. Just as my arm is a fulcrum,